Do you believe that this takes a fucking lot of discipline, a lot of hard work, a lot of effort? Well, that's what a lot of people will lead you to believe. It's not true. You can do this. Doesn't matter what age you are and what genetics you've been dealt. The better part of 6 years, I've worked with a lot of experts across the globe. And there's three foundations to achieving that without using a fucking app tracking calories, having all these fancy supplements in a three video series. So as we progress, you're going to see how easy it is to get that physique, even if you got bad genes. So Dr. J, genetic expert, also did a 5-year PhD on hormones. When I started working with Dr. J years and years ago, we had a look at my DNA. And as it turns out, I don't have great fat loss genes. This is Dr. J explaining to me way back then how shitty my fat loss genes truly are.
Shortly after 20, my FTO gene took over and I got fat.
Yeah, yeah. Those are powerful genes. Those FTO. The BBC did a whole 1 hour documentary on that gene.
We didn't even talk about that, did we? Have we talked about that yet?
No, it's in there though for
There
sure.
is that it there? There we go. Look, so I've got a pretty impressive.
The worst ones you can have.
So I've got the worst obesity genes that you can have.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, you could have other ones on top of that, but have three pluses on these FTO genes is definitely stacked up against you. It basically means your fat cells want to store fat more than most people. You don't want to burn it as energy. You just want to store it.
All right. So these are the FTO genes in question. So I've got not just one, I've got one, two, three. And it goes beyond the fat loss. FTOs. Well, how the fuck did I do that? That's pretty cool. Over here, myocardial fibrosis. You can't recover from that. Heart failure, atherosclerosis, heart disease, aneurysm, stroke. And am I concerned? Fuck no. I know how to mitigate any issues because I know this now. Really simple stuff. So, doesn't matter what genes you've got. Now, you don't need to fucking count calories. I know a lot of experts out there will call bullshit on what I'm about to tell you. But when you go through these three video series before you open your mouth and say this is not possible, if you listen to these three videos, you'll see that, yeah, you don't have to count calories. All right. Now, this is another legend that I'm being coached by Dr. or Professor Bart K. Now, this legend, advanced degree in nutrition, exercise physiology. He's also a cardiopathophysicist. Pretty educated, wouldn't you say? And he's just talking about the ridiculousness of counting calories. Check this out.
Incorrect, but to say that that is a valid, scientifically robust and correct argument for calories in, calories out, that's where you've fallen over flat on your face because it doesn't do any such thing.
Yeah, exactly. And as
you've already alluded to it, we are an open thermodynamic system.
Exactly. And to put that whole theory to plan, you've got to drop your calories significantly, which isn't good. You don't get enough nutrients, crash metabolism. So not good. As I mentioned, I'm leaning out with around about the same mass coming in and out.
Yeah. I leaned out over a...
All right. So I'm going to show you. Like I never count those stupid dumbass calories. It's just, why would you want to do that? You can get to that place. So in video number 2 in this series, we're going to talk about nutrition and, what you need to do to signal satiety. Really simple stuff. Now, what you mightn't know in this first video here, I've spoken about previously on the YouTubies, POMC, pro-opiomelanocortin. Now, it does a fucking shit ton of amazing things in your body. Listen carefully. You are not triggering its release. And very shortly, you'll see why that is detrimental to a lot of different things. Number one, it will lower your appetite. Huh. Well, that's kind of what you want, don't you? But it also increases basal, metabolic rate, and it does a lot more beyond that. So, in a nutshell, here's another thing. So the whole key idea of what I do is I'm looking to stack the fucking odds in my favor. And that's what I'm going to do for you in this first video in the series. So what you see on screen there is photobiomodulation. And you don't need fancy equipment for this. You can do this naturally. Listen to these results in a group of women. Group 1, photobiomodulation, they lost 11.26 kgs of fat and they increased their muscle mass by 0.6 kgs. So they put on muscle and dropped a significant fucking shit ton of fat. That's exactly what you want. And the control group only lost 5.8 kgs of fat, so like half, but they lost a significant amount of muscle mass, so that lowered their metabolism. They struggled. They felt like shit. And it's like, why even bother? And the other group were like, yeah, man, this is awesome. You know, as you can see here, we have to stack the odds in our favor. And all the things I'm going to show you over these 3 video series going to blow your mind. Let's talk about POMC, pro-opio melanocortin. The most important thing you need to know is that it's cut up and cleaved into 10 other pro-hormone products. Now, this one here, gamma, MSH, blood pressure, better blood flow, detox, fat loss, all of that through sodium modulation, homeostatic balance of sodium. And it acts like an adaptogen for cortisol. She too high, bring that son of a bitch down. Too low, bring that son of a bitch up, because we have to have optimal levels throughout the day and the night. And alpha MSH, which I talked about on the previous screen there, melanin synthesis, and I'll talk about why that is so important in a few slides from now. It also regulates inflammation, which is a great thing, keeping it at bay, nice and healthy levels. It modulates both branches of the immune system. It regulates your performance in the bedroom if you want to have kids, reproduction, and also sex hormone production and libido. And as I mentioned, it reduces appetite and increases basal metabolic rate. So we're only 3 pro-hormones down. It also releases CLIP, which is an insulin secretagogue, keeping insulin at healthy levels. And if you know anything about insulin, that's huge for fat loss. And then 2 more other weapons for fat loss. These just here, 5 and 6, lipoproteins. So this is lipolysis, which is fat loss. And then you want to feel good, man, don't you? Yeah, you want to feel a lot better. Well, you're going to feel a lot better when the sex hormones come up. Plus, the libido comes up. Plus, you're releasing these endogenous opioids. We make those sons of bitches. We're going to feel good. And this one here creates a relaxed antipsychotic effect and also helps modulate your blood pressure, better blood flow. And then the final endorphin, you also got enkephalins as well. Amphetamine-like neurological effects, and it also helps with your immune system. And the final one, beta MSH, regulates feeding behavior and hypothalamic control of body weight. And this is the peptide in question, and these are all the products it makes. Again, we're stacking the fucking odds in your favor, legends. And a lot of people are kind of stressed out. Well, when you know how to trigger POMC, you don't need supplements. It's really simple to do. I'll show you exactly what to do in this very video, somewhere along this video. Right here, this POMC, she's going to acutely inhibit cortisol release healthy levels. Same is true with long-term POMC. So gene expression optimizes POMC long-term. Now, the caveat right here. So when you're triggering the release of this pro-hormone, it can take some time, because right now you probably haven't been triggering at the right time of the day and the right amounts. So as this happens over the next 6 weeks, you're continually triggering its release, gene expression goes up. So you're going to be producing a boatload of POMC, and you're going to reap in the benefits of everything this son of a bitch pro-hormone does for you. So video number 1 right here, we're going to talk about sleep, POMC, which we've covered, pre-vitamin D, grounding, also melanin, and this bullshit here, artificial blue light, which is going to screw up your energy, increase cortisol, and completely shortchange your performance. So let's get into sleep. I don't know whether you've heard of this previously, but there's a lot of research on it now, and a great book to pick up is this one here. It's called The Light Doctor. Martin Moore, MD with a PhD, decades of research on this. So, artificial light at nighttime, which is what we call Allen, right here, is going to screw up your circadian rhythm, your sleep cycles, cause inflammation. That's not good. That is fucking terrible. Protein synthesis goes down, fat loss goes down, but fat storage certainly goes up. Another paper right here, the blue light, the toxic bullshit, circadian disruptions, neurodegeneration, cancer, obesity, sleep disorders. So, another thing that POMC will help is detox through the biotoxin pathway and also sleep. So, POMC will trigger the release of alpha MSH. Now, if your gene expression of POMC is low, alpha MSH will be low too. So you'll have sleep issues, you'll have chronic pain, joint pain, gut issues, things like headaches, gut issues, which is, the gut is foundational. Prolonged illnesses, you just seem to just can never shake the shit. And you've also got resistant staph infections, bacterial infections. Then you've got issues with cortisol, stress hormones all over the place. And then reduced sex hormone production. And this right here, which is huge, anti-diuretic hormone. So when you don't produce a lot of anti-diuretic hormone, you'll go to the toilet and piss too much, and you'll be losing a lot of minerals, which isn't good. And at nighttime, you'll be waking up once, twice, or 3 times to urinate, do a piss. Now, ever since I've got this right, I do not wake up at nighttime. I'm sleeping all the way through. So this POMC is a pretty powerful son of a bitch. And when it comes to POMC and gut health, so you can see how it's going to help with your gut problems there. We're talking about antibacterial and parasitic actions. It also boosts the thickness of your sinuses, your esophagus, your gut, your intestines, your colon. It also reduces biofilms. It selectively increases beneficial bacteria, and it also modulates your immune system in your gut. And incidentally, about 80% of your immune system is in your gut. And then it also helps with gut motility, endotoxin protection, and of course, the biotoxin pathway, which helps chelate heavy metals. So the way you want to protect yourself from some of this toxic blue light and set your circadian rhythm in stone, and we'll just touch on it now, is blue blockers at nighttime, right? So the Allen blue blockers at nighttime. When you put those glasses on and you look at something that's blue, if it still looks blue, the shit ain't working. It will look gray, or it might look a bit green, but it certainly won't look blue, because if it looks like it's blue, the blue light's coming into your eyes and screwing up your sleep, your circadian rhythm. And genetics plays into it too, incidentally. This is me. I'm homozygous, increased response to blue light. So you'll be damn sure they'll be wearing those. Now, the way that you want to set your circadian rhythm through the super chiasmatic nucleus, this is a brain region, through the opsin receptors, melanopsin in question. So when you go out, when the sun is rising, just above the horizon there, that's it. That will set your circadian rhythm. About 5 minutes, but the longer you stay out there, the better it is for you. Now, we've covered how we're going to start to set the circadian rhythm. We've covered POMC as well. Let's quickly talk about melanin and pre-vitamin D. So when you don't have a lot of melanin, you're running on empty, and that's not a good thing. This will absolutely shock you. So when you've got low melanin levels throughout your entire body, it's in the brain, it's everywhere, your mitochondria, they're tapping out. And the mitochondria, energy, testosterone production, detox, cell signaling, it is fucking huge. Hearing loss, vision loss, reactive oxygen species, inflammation. And you've got an exaggerated immune response, which isn't good, and neurodegeneration. What I'm going to do now is play a video. This is Dr. Alexis Cohen. Now, she got her PhD from Princeton, one of the top metabolic labs on the planet, and she's just talking about melanin. So listen carefully.
If you want to build your internal melanin, like we have melanin deep in our brain, in the locus coeruleus and the substantia nigra. The substantia nigra is the part of the brain that becomes degraded in Parkinson's disease. It loses melanin over time, and melanin And dopamine, you might know that dopamine is like a defective in the Parkinson's disease, but melanin and dopamine are very tightly linked, where they both share the same precursor, tyrosine, which is an amino acid. And so what the body can essentially do is, if dopamine is, let's say, running low, it can break down melanin to make L-dopa and then shunt it into dopamine production. And melanin can be broken down also if there's a very oxidative environment. So if it's like you're under a lot of inflammatory stress, you're in, let's say, a poor light environment 24/7, you're eating bad foods, you're not moving your body, it creates a very reactive and oxidative environment that melanin can actually help to sequester some of those reactive species. But it's at a cost, because if you don't get out of that environment, now the melanin is actually being like terminally degraded and you're losing those sheets. And we have melanin not only in those parts of the brain, but also in the nasal mucosa, the oral mucosa, the inner ear. It's essentially at the barrier of every sense organ, also in the back of the eye, the pigmented retinal epithelium. So the retina and in general, the body requires melanin to function optimally, especially as it relates to the sensory organs, including the sensory apparatus within the brain. Now, the mainstream dermatologist will tell you that there's no such thing as a healthy tan, which is insane, because
because that tan produces extra melanin, which fuels you up. So I don't know about you, I certainly don't want low melanin levels. And this is the data on Parkinson's disease. So melanin is this black stuff you see here in a brain region called the substantia nigra. So there's the control. No Parkinson's disease. So over here, Parkinson's disease. You see how there's fuck all of it? And it's a dopamine issue. And as she mentioned, Dr. Alexis there, melanin can be enzymatically converted into dopamine. And it also sequesters reactive oxygen species as well. So it's taking care of a lot of oxidative stress. So that is melanin. It actually does a lot more than that, which I won't dive into today. But just realize you don't want it to be fucking low. You want it to be full as a boot. Full tank. Now let's talk about vitamin D. Now, I use the sun to build up my vitamin D for 2 reasons. There was actually more than that, but we'll talk about 2. I don't use supplements anymore. Now, the first reason for that is when you actually make your own vitamin D, and there's a few things you got to do for that to happen. And I'll talk about that when we get to the end of this and I'll give you the steps. But check this out. You see all these isoforms? They're sulfated pre-vitamin D. And they can go straight in, perfuse into tissues and organs and do everything that vitamin D does. Now, when you supplement vitamin D, you miss out on all this shit. You're missing out on all that pre-vitamin D, sulfated vitamin D, pre-vitamin D. This is Dr. Alexis just talking about why supplementation, not a good idea.
So is it okay for people to use vitamin D supplements while they do the tactics at the same time, but then once you get past 60, you let go of it, kind of thing?
So there's actually no point, because if you look at the data on vitamin D supplementation, the only benefit you receive from that is at the very low end, where it's like if you have overt rickets, like you're sub 20 nanograms per mil, let's say, and you have issues with your teeth and your bones, like the physical calcium homeostatic processes that are modulated and facilitated by vitamin D, then you can supplement, because in the acute sense, you actually really need it. But in the long term, all of the data on vitamin D suggests that although vitamin D status is an important predictor for a whole host of diseases, including multiple cancer types, autoimmune disease, diabetes, cognitive decline, that vitamin D supplementation doesn't actually provide benefits in any of those areas. And so what that's telling us is that vitamin D primarily is serving as a biomarker of your sun exposure habits. It's not something that you're going to get a benefit from supplementing at that higher, like that optimal range. And so if you're not able to get to that, 60 or above range naturally through the sun, that's when I would be doing a thorough survey of your environment to see what exactly is going on there. Is it where you live? Is it something about, is there a cell tower by your house? Where are you spending a lot of time? Is there a lot of non-native EMFs in that environment, for example? Or are you exposed to a ton of artificial light? Because like I mentioned earlier, that blue light, that artificial blue light on the skin inhibits mitochondrial function in the skin. And we actually need functioning mitochondria in the skin in order to not only make new melanin, but also to make vitamin D, because vitamin D synthesis requires metabolic water production by those mitochondria within the skin. And so there's other things and other aspects of the environment I would look at in that case, but I would not recommend supplementation primarily because, one, there's no evidence that it will help with any of those chronic disease states. But two, it will also mask your ability to see how much you're actually making in the sun because you're artificially inflating it. And now it's kind of hard to understand, like, am I getting enough sun? I don't know, because now I'm supplementing and it's kind of muddying the waters, let's say.
Yeah, that makes.
Oh, yeah. So you're not getting that sulfated pre-vitamin D. And you're not getting any melanin. And we just talked about melanin. You're not getting any POMC. So you can see the benefits of the sun there. So we'll talk more about that towards the end there when I talk about the steps. I don't know whether you've heard about grounding before, but it's a pretty big fucking deal. So one of the main things it does is it increases the electrons in your body. And over the next couple of slides, it'll become very apparent why that's super important. So grounding here, two things. But before I talk about that, well, actually three, this one up here. Got a couple of videos to play for you. Again, this one is from Dr. Alexis, just talking about the benefits of grounding.
Playing barefoot anyways. We didn't talk about grounding, but when your bare feet are in contact with the earth and your palms, you get free electrons from the earth. Negative charge. Negative charge is what powers your mitochondria to make energy. So
when your body is touching the earth,
specifically your hands and your feet.
When your hands and your feet are touching the earth, it's going to give your mitochondria more energy.
Literally, it's free electrons from the earth. And
electrons.
And you can look at the studies, and we talked about electrons earlier. That's what powers energy production in the mitochondria. But if you look at the studies on grounding, you can see even 20 minutes of grounding, they do thermographs, so they can show basically if there's inflammation in an area, they'll do like full body. So they'll show like there was inflammation in their face. And actually, fun fact, after a cell phone for like a few minutes, you can see the thermograph showing this inflammatory impetus within the face. The tissues of the face are hot. Ground for 20 minutes, everything cools down. So it allows you to maintain healthy redox status, redox being that net negative charge. So if you think about our ancestors, we were always grounded because any material that is natural will facilitate that flow of electrons. So if you're wearing leather on your feet, for example, or hides or whatever, cotton even, that all allows that electron to flow. But now with all of our rubber-soled shoes, our synthetic fabrics and everything like that, we're blocking that electrical connection to the earth. And we're cutting off basically 1/3 of the electron supply we're supposed to get.
As you can see there, we're getting free electrons. And she talked about the phone to your head, inflammatory impetus on a thermograph. So this is a thermograph here. So you can see this is inflamed. 20 minutes later, inflammation is gone. You're also getting that electrical charge. And I'll talk about why that's important for energy production shortly. But another thing that it's doing, these free electrons, they're increasing your ability, your redox. You got to have a big redox potential to detox and also to heal. So right here, this is 3 blood samples, 1, 2, 3. So you can see before grounding, this is 45 minutes before. See how they're all clumped together? What's that going to do for your blood flow and your blood pressure? Not a lot. So you have poor blood flow to all your tissues and organs. And this hypertension can lead to heart disease there. So 45 minutes later, you can see how they all pull apart. So the electrons go into the red blood cells, give them a net negative charge, springs them apart, better blood flow. So that's one thing. Now, when you have to detox and heal, we need a good redox potential. So redox, I'll actually play this video. This is from Dr. Sarah Pugh. She's got a PhD in biophysics and biochemistry.
Oil rig, oxidation is loss, reduction is gain, and I'm just talking about electrons. So another way to describe redox is if you've got plenty of electrons, then that means all your chemical reactions are going to run smoothly, because basically all chemical reactions of the body is just moving hydrogens and electrons about in simple terms, and that's what a redox reaction is. Something gets oxidized and something gets reduced, and like 100,000 of these happen per second. So that would come back down to why having not enough electrons is bad, because it just means we can't run our chemical reactions in our bodies as well as we could. So that would be another way to describe low redox. So if we can't run our chemical reactions as quickly as normal, then we can't make as much enzymes as hormones, defending molecules and so on, metabolize food.
So all those issues play up. So those electrons are a pretty big deal. So in a nutshell, we want to increase your electron pool. So the sun is one way, especially through melanin synthesis, POMC, and grounding your feet to the bare earth is another way. So think of NADH, that's the electron carrier. It's like a cellular battery, detoxification, enzyme reactions to make hormones and even POMC, testosterone, healing, repair. So that's basically what it comes down to. Now let's talk about what happens when you eat food to produce energy. So basically your glucose or your fat, and we want to burn body fat, remember? And of course amino acids, but we don't want to be wasting amino acids making energy, do we? So either come into there through the TCA cycle in the mitochondria, and they're producing FADH2 and NADH, and those two extract this from your food. FADH2, 2 electrons, 2 protons, otherwise known as hydrogen ions, hydrogen 1 ions. NADH has 2 electrons and also 1 proton, hydrogen ion. And we'll talk more about this in the second video when we come to nutrition. But just so you know right now, when you eat food, all it's doing is extracting electrons and the protons, hydrogen ions. And when you ground your feet, you're getting those electrons. And when you're in the sun, you're also getting these protons and electrons as well. So the electrons, they go into the inner mitochondrial membrane space. And as they go through complex 1 through 4, all these electrons are doing as they're going through is sucking up protons, hydrogen ions. When enough of these little bastards get up there, it creates an electrical pressure gradient. And then it comes down through a protein complex called ATP synthase. And that's just like a little nanomotor, spins it like a turbine, produces your ATP and your deuterium depleted molecular water. And that's how it plays out. So our food, FADH2, NADH, electrons and protons. Now, what might surprise you is that potentially only 1/3 of your electrons and protons can come from food. So I've got a video here to play, and this is Dr. Alexis just showing us where the other 2/3 of the energy supply for the electron transport chain to make your energy, your ATP and your molecular water come from. So check this out.
When I think about bioenergetics, most people think about food. Food is only 1/3 of the story. We also have direct exposure and stimulation of melanin in the skin by the sun. Like I said earlier, that makes free electrons and free energy. And we also have the third pillar being grounding and direct electron exchange from the earth. We're really only getting one of the 3 pillars in the modern day from the food, and most of the food is BS anyways. So our bodies are starving to death. And that's actually how I see diabetes. I'm going to go back to your leukemia story in a second, but diabetes I really see as like the body is starving because the tissues, the muscle, in general, the tissues can't take up glucose very well because insulin resistant. They also can't burn fat or ketones really well either because the mitochondria are dysfunctional. That's like the root of the issue in insulin resistance and in diabetes. And so if your tissues can't burn anything, they're literally just shrinking away. And that's why we see sarcopenia and like muscle loss and frailty being associated with metabolic dysfunction and insulin resistance. And the tissues just need food. They need support, but food doesn't have to be food that you eat. Food can also be sun on your skin and your bare feet on the earth. People don't realize that. Right. And that's also something I want to study in my light lab is that like nobody's looking at these kind of interventions, like just putting people outside in nature under natural light because it's not lucrative, I guess. It's literally free 99. You don't have to have anybody else's prescription to go do it either.
Yeah, that's interesting, that connection with the electrons and like the grounding and the food. Like his food is just electrons essentially at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, when you're eating food, you're eating for protons and electrons.
Right.
Of course.
You're also eating for micronutrients there. Not 2/4, it's actually 2/3. All right, so food 1/3, grounding and sun, melanin, as you mentioned there, but few other mechanisms as well, will give you your full complement of electrons and protons, hydrogen ions. And when we get to the second video there, you're going to understand why deuterium is bad, what a DNA enhanced diet is or an elimination diet, food timing to make sure your testosterone is in the up position, and we don't have this fucking Randall cycle switched on. We do not want that switched on, especially if you want to pack on a lot of muscle. Now, we're getting into another area of what I want to talk about now is the mitochondria. So we've touched on the mitochondria there, but as you can see there, the circadian rhythm is, if it's out, you're going to have mitochondrial dysfunction. This is why that's not good. So the mitochondria do a lot of incredible things. Here's just a few. Necessary for sex hormone production. Only place you can burn body fat and fat that's coming in through nutrition. It creates over 90% of your ATP, the mitochondria, and they are integral in regulating neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, melatonin. But they create up to 90% of your active oxygens and nitrogen species. Now here becomes the problem. They can become mutated, the mitochondria, and that's called heteroplasmy. And there's a threshold. When you get to this threshold, all bets are off. Cancer, a whole bunch of diseases that you don't want. Now, the great news is you can go from heteroplasmy to homeoplasmy. That's 100% wild type. And we'll talk about that in future videos in this series. Now, when I went through and did Dr. Alexa's metabolic mastery mentorship, she talked about how important the mitochondria is. And again, heteroplasmy, mutated mitochondria, and we want to have homeoplasmy, 100% wild types. We produce a lot of energy, sex hormones, detox, all of it, neurotransmitters, fat loss, protein synthesis. So this is what she said about the mitochondria.
You're turning on the processes that allow your body to deplete the damaged mitochondria from its cells. And so in effect, what you're doing is you're purifying that colony. And then we can engage things like mitochondrial biogenesis, or the production of new mitochondria from the good ones. And now in effect, you actually can reverse age, because aging is really dictated by the levels of mutation within mitochondria. If we look at the research, Doug Wallace's work shows that you gain about 10% mutation burden per decade of life. And what that's doing is by the time you're 80 or 90 years old, now your mitochondria look like they're 80 or 90, but you could also be 20 years old and have mitochondria in your liver that look like they're 80, depending on, what hand you were dealt and the lifestyle factors and environment that you spend a lot of time in. And so it's very actionable to literally reverse age in order to optimize health.
So you can actually measure this on a test and see where you are now and how you've walked that back, cellular aging, so you can actually reverse biological aging. And it all comes down to the mitochondria. So let's talk about artificial blue light. As I mentioned on the beginning of this, guess what that shit does? You see, this is natural light here, and that is beautiful. When you're indoors, because of our stupid energy crisis thing, they've got these LED lights, and there's just a lot of enriched blue light and a bit of green there, and there's no healing therapeutic infrared, and there's no POMC triggering, pre-vitamin D or melanin triggering. So you've got a little bit of the spectrum right there, about 10% of the spectrum, and it's very weak. So when you're exposed to artificial blue light during the day, and you can fix this problem too. Here's one issue. Cortisol goes up. That's just one issue. I'm going to show you a couple more slides to show you how detrimental this artificial blue light indeed is. Professor Glenn Jeffrey, so he's done a lot of research on this, and we're missing out on this healing part and energy charging part of natural light. And incidentally, do you remember the incandescent bulbs that we used to have? Well, they had this infrared light, and they had visible light, and there was a lot of infrared light. So when they changed everything with these stupid LEDs, our health really started to decline and suffer. And this is Professor Glenn Jeffrey showing how fucking detrimental this toxic artificial blue light truly is.
Always use the analogy that let's view mitochondria as a battery with a charge. And it is a battery, and it does have a charge. But with aging and with disease, the battery runs down. The mitochondria regulate aging. So it happens that Long wavelengths of light are mitochondria respond to them by charging a battery that is actually in a poor state. So it can be a poor state through aging, it can be in a poor state because of metabolic disease. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, look at the sort of the short wavelengths, the blue discharges the battery. It reduces the charge on the battery. And as you reduce the charge on the battery, you can imagine like an old car battery, as it runs down, it starts to leak acid. In this case, it produces something called reactive oxygen species. And what that does is it drives inflammation, right? So our battery runs down, we get old, we don't have the energy to kick our legs out of bed in the way that we used to. And at the same time, we start to get inflammation because the battery's leaking acid.
So you can kind of see how that's a big problem. So the mitochondria, because they're not getting that therapeutic dose of healing energy from the infrared long wavelengths, they go through a process, number one, called fission, resulting in small damaged, beat up, four-cylinder mitochondria, sex hormone production, energy production, detox, all of it. And to make matters worse, over time, as Dr. Alexis said there, 10 years of 10% mutation every 10 years. So 10 out of 10 for that. So you go into a state of heteroplasmy, and that is pretty detrimental. Lots of research, as she mentioned, Dr. Alexis, Professor Doug Wallace, this is all he researches, decades and decades and decades. Mitochondrial DNA and disease, brain. You picking up on what I'm laying down? Cardiac, heart, endocrine, diabetes, renal, myopathy in your muscles, and also neuropathy, central nervous system, gut issues, hearing, eyesight. So what you can take away is that the infrared spectrum, whether that's the infrared lights, which you can actually purchase. I've actually got one myself, where you go out into the morning and afternoon where there's a lot of infrared. This infrared light, anti-inflammatory processes, cell metabolism up, burning through body fat, charging everything up, charging mitochondria up, and cell repair, healing. It's so therapeutic. And if you want to pick up a great book on that, again, The Light Doctor by Martin Moore, MD with a PhD. So check this out on the skin. Do you recall when Dr. Alexis talked about making your vitamin D? Well, guess what happens when you're inside with this toxic blue light? Exposure to blue light for 6 hours and 5 consecutive days. And most people are doing this 7 days a week. They're spending about 90% of their day in this toxic blue light right here. Think about that. So let's continue. Decreased the expression of genes that maintain skin barrier and tissue integrity. So you're photo-aging much faster. And exposure to blue light significantly increased protein biomarkers associated with aging, inflammation, and tissue damage. And it just gets worse and worse. So the cortisol goes up, and it also damages the mitochondria. So it's a pretty big issue. So what we can take away, I'll just go here actually, what we can take away from the full spectrum there is that the UVA, the UVB, when you get healthy doses of that very slowly over time, your sex hormones go up, your thyroid, melanin production goes up, your dopamines, so you're focused and charged up and motivated, serotonin, happy gut, happy brain, melatonin, sleep, and it's a powerful antioxidant in and of itself. You get your pre-vitamin D and you get pro-hormones, the POMC, pro-opio, melanocortin, and the healing therapeutic part of natural sunlight there creates exclusion zone water. I won't discuss that here today. Stem cells can heal every cell in your body. Fucking huge. And of course, healing. DNA repair, melatonin, ATP synthase, extra energy, as we've discussed, and metabolic deuterium, depleted water. So let's just have a look at the research on just red light therapy. And remember, in the morning and the afternoon, you're going to get a lot of this therapeutic, natural red light. So you don't have to buy a red light therapy device, but you can certainly do that too if you choose to. So over the last, I think it's I think it's 70 years, 70 years, and about 100,000 studies in a red light therapy. Check this out. Alopecia, hair loss. You don't want to go bald, do you? Autoimmune issues. It's going to increase healing in your body, wound healing. It's going to help with arthritis, Achilles tendinopathy, pain and inflammation, even spinal cord injury. And what about that pesky abdominal fat? Yeah. And then muscle exercise recovery, skin issues like cirrhosis, eczema, traumatic brain injury. And the reason is very simple. You see you've got the red light that penetrates deep into the subcutaneous there, and the infrared, longer wavelengths, penetrates into the bone throughout your entire body, charges up the mitochondria, and it's just very therapeutic and healing in the body. But if you're spending most of your time here, you're moving in the opposite direction and you've got no healing, no therapeutic benefits, no POMC, no pre-vitamin D, no melanin production at all. So you're just tapping out. So this study here, which I talked about at the beginning, and again, the key idea is we are stacking the odds in your favor. Can you see what we're doing here? We're stacking them in your favor. A group of women. So photobiomodulation with a device like that. It was only about 7 minutes per side. So a total of 14 minutes, 3 times a week. Not a lot of effort there at all. So you got a significant fat loss, 11.26 kgs, but you increased muscle mass by 0.6 of a kg. And the control group lost hardly any fat, half as much fat, and they lost a significant amount of muscle. So as you can see there, you can drop body fat and put on muscle at the same time. So never believe the gurus out there that tell you can't do a thing. When you speak to the right people, as I have for the better part of 6 years across the globe, you pick up all these strategies, and that's what I'm doing, stacking the fucking odds in your favor. So that is what I'm about. Now, let's talk about how we're going to do this. So this is the first thing that you want to do moving forward. Now, you can download an app called My Circadian. So it's in the App Store, Android, and also iPhone. Now, remember, the POMC is going to lower your appetite and increase your basal metabolic rate, plus a whole bunch of other things that you want. Feel-good hormones, lipolysis, extra fat loss, blood pressure, all of those things are going to be optimized. Your immune system, gut health, all of those things. So you get out in the morning when the sun's coming up, and this app will tell you when the sun's coming up, and you get about 5, but the longer you're out there, the better. So you're getting more therapeutic benefits of the infrared. And incidentally, the infrared is about a 4-to-1 ratio, sunrise and sunset. So you're going to get a lot of therapeutic effects. So if you want to heal the body, increase your energy, this is a given. You have to do this. Now, as you can see here, that when I screenshotted this app a couple of months ago, the UVA by itself was present for a good hour and a half. So the UVA there is going to trigger this POMC. All right. Now, the UVA also, beyond POMC, is going to help with your skin, your lungs, inflammation. So it's going to help regulate and optimize your inflammation, your inflammasomes, and your muscles. So vasodilation, glucose uptake, mitochondrial activity, and muscle performance, UVA. And your performance in the bedroom goes up, your libido goes up, blood flow to those organs. And you've also got neural protection, and it helps with neural toxicity and neurotransmitters. So things like dopamine, serotonin. And then, of course, heart health. Platelet aggregation is optimized, vasodilation, tone and permeability. So you've got much better cardiovascular function. So as you can see, this app will show you when you've got UVA present by itself. Number 2, again in the afternoon there. Now, the UVB is going to strongly hit POMC. It's also going to trigger pre-vitamin D and also melanin synthesis as well. So if you want any more information about how to do that safely, I've got some information below to join a group, because getting this right requires a bit more training. And what I want to show you in that group is how to do this safely. Now, beyond that, if you listen to Dr. Alexis Cohen, you do a search on YouTube, you can find that information. Now, I'm not going to give you that information because YouTube will probably censor me and take this video down. And I put a lot of effort, as you can see, into these presentations, and I don't want YouTube taking me down, censoring this information. Because as far as they're concerned, UVB is toxic. But as we can now see, it's not. Now, another great benefit of going out into UVA in the afternoon there, it's going to lower your cravings at nighttime. Why? Well, it's going to lower your appetite and it's going to increase your basal metabolic rate. That's a really good thing. And the sunset is also needed because it's got a 4-to-1 ratio of the healing properties of infrared, the long wavelengths. So let's just have a quick look at what it does for skin health. The morning, the sunrise, and the afternoon, the sunset. So it's like you got to bookend this. You got to get the sunrise and the sunset to have all of these benefits for skin health. So right here, you've got collagen production, collagen synthesis, wrinkle reduction, and sagging skin improvement. Mitochondrial activity enhancement. So it increases cellular energy, as we've now can see quite clearly. Efficient repair process throughout the entire body, improves healing outcome throughout the entire body, and anti-inflammatory. So it upregulates genes for being anti-inflammation, and it also helps recover from any UV damage that you've had. So that's why it's really important to get the sunset if you've had the UVB exposure. It reduces swelling. And the final thing here, tissue repair and activation. So you've got to trigger the sunset there. New skin cell growth, wound healing, restores skin function. So as you can see there, if you're stuck indoors, you're really missing out on POMC, pre-vitamin D, melanin, and the therapeutic and healing effects of the long wave light lengths going deep into your tissues and organs and through bone into your brain, all of it. So what we've covered so far is circadian, POMC, vitamin D, grounding, blue light, and how toxic it is, and setting your circadian rhythm in stone. So on the next video there, we're going to talk about nutrition, deuterium status, food timing, testosterone production, whether you want to use a DNA-enhanced diet or do something different. I'll talk about what that is. So as you can see, it's not too hard to get this physique. You don't need to count calories. You don't need fancy supplements. You don't need any of that. So if you've got any questions, drop a comment below, share this, like this. It really helps me get this information out there. And this is what I love to do. I want people to feel as good as I feel. Like I'm 54 in July this year, and I've never felt better. And it's because I just got sick and tired about 6 years ago, sick and tired of not knowing all the answers. So I reached out to these experts all across the globe, and I want to give you what I've learned so you can thrive like I do. Get back in your prime, get the, fix the wrinkles, the accelerated aging, and get this body that you want. So that is it. Peak health, lean muscle, zero guesswork, no fancy supplements needed in this 3-part video series. So I hope you found this helpful, and please like and share. That will really help me get the message out there, because I really want people to be kicking ass in life, feeling like the person they were born to be.